All right, I've got some catch up to do. Today is Wednesday, and I want to talk about a concert that I went to see a week ago, last Wednesday, so I'm a bit delayed in getting this out. In my defense, I was traveling for work, which is how come I got to see this concert. I was at Carnegie Hall in New York a week ago to hear the pianist Vikingur Olafsson play the Goldberg variations. So I was traveling for work until the weekend, and I picked up a bit of a cold, and then on Monday I had a tooth pulled, which you won't know because I've got a beard that is variously large or small, and I don't smile very often. But I lost a canine. It got cracked. This is my theory. It got cracked during some surgery that I had last year, where they have one of those big intubators. And there was one of the big ventilator tubes go down your throat, and then they pull it out and crack the tooth. So I got infected like 3 times in the last 6 months, and each time it's miserable. Like a properly infected tooth is like existential in its pain. So we said, let's pull it out, which now it's gone. And I have to decide what to replace it with. I'd like to replace it with a gold tooth. I wonder if that's possible. My dentist, if I say that, will look at me like I'm insane. So maybe I need to find a different dentist. Anyway, those are all excuses, and you don't care about excuses. You want to hear about this concert. So, Vikingur Olafsson is youngish and kind of well known, I think. It's a bit of I wouldn't say he's a superstar, but he's a well known player. He's very popular on Spotify. I have heard a lot of his recordings. He's done some Bach and some. He recorded some Rameau, the Hours and the Arts, or the Arts and the Hours. It's lovely. He's a very nice. I've always thought he has a beautiful tone. It's very sweet, and I would say, coming into this concert, that I did hold a bit of judgment about that it was sweet, but perhaps a bit homogenous. You know, that's a jerky thing to say, but those are the kinds of prejudgments that we come into, right? He has a beautiful tone, and so I assume that that's all he's capable of. That it's an entirely unfair prejudgment. I was blown away by this performance. So let me fill in some context. I said it's Carnegie Hall. I travel to New York for work, not as often as I used to, but for a while, pre-COVID, my role where I work, I needed to travel quite a bit. And for a few years, I was between Pittsburgh and New York for a couple days a week. I mean, it was quite a lot. But I never went out, right? My understanding of New York City was like a thread from LaGuardia down, when is that? I don't know, Roosevelt Parkway, highway, down the river. So across a bridge or under a tunnel, and then down, and then zip across a street until the office, which is right next to Ground Zero, right next to the new World Trade Center. So I would work, and then there were 1 or 2 hotels just on the opposite side of Ground Zero that I would always stay in, and that was kind of it. And then at a certain point, I would reverse the thread, like Theseus and the Minotaur, right? Or Hansel and Gretel and the breadcrumbs. find my way back to the Delta terminal at LaGuardia, and then fly home to Pittsburgh. And that was it. You asked me what New York City is, it would be about 250 yards plus a thread, which is kind of pathetic, right? But there you go. I didn't really know anybody, and I'm not a very adventurous person. Plus, I'm working. I was tired. I would go back to the hotel room, I would eat, and I would watch Discovery Channel. Pretty basic, The LaGuardia has changed. So in 2019, early 2020, so the last time I was traveling, and before that, LaGuardia has just been a dump. It's been like going into a closet, opening up a door, and then getting on a plane. And then it was all under construction. Well, now the construction is done, and it's really quite a beautiful airport. So that's nice. Sometimes I'd fly into Newark, but from LaGuardia I get a cab. From Newark I would get a train in, and I find the trains difficult to manage. All right, so I had this three-day trip, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to a concert. Maybe I'll go to the opera. Well, the opera was dark that week. There was nothing at the Met. New York Philharmonic was playing something Thursday night. It's like the Alpine Symphony, some Strauss. No, nothing that I was going to... And then I saw the Carnegie Hall listings, and there was the Goldberg variations of Viking Gorolfsson, and I thought, okay, I'm just gonna do it. And it sold out. I mean, by the time concert came around, there were no tickets left. That is what sold out means. So I bought a nice ticket down on the orchestra, or the parquet, I think it's called there. Is that right? And Carnegie Hall is Carnegie Hall. I mean, there's a vibe. I live in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is tiny compared to New York. It really struck me as I took the cab up to 57th Street, Avenue. I don't know. Everybody in New York who just heard me say that cringed, right? Because I think the streets are numbered, and I don't know. One of them is numbered, and one of the avenues are numbered. A street, no, the streets are letters, and the avenues are numbers. I don't know. Whatever. But it occurred to me that each block of New York City is about as big as Pittsburgh, certainly in terms of population density. So it is overwhelming. I mean, I'm just used to a smaller city. I hailed a cab on the street. It is true. If you raise your hand, a cab will pull up. You don't have to do anything except raise your hand. I was pretty sure that only happened in movies. And that not only does it only happen in movies, but people in New York who saw you do that would laugh at you and say, we only do that in movies. Get out of here. And then they would tie my arms together and throw me in the river. That river, the Hudson, is huge. It's as big as the ocean. We have 3 rivers in Pittsburgh, and combined, they're not as big as the Hudson. It's a big river. You really get the feeling that it's deep, a deep river with a lot of water in it. So I got the cab to Carnegie Hall. I walked around a little bit, got in. I've been to Carnegie Hall once before, I think. Maybe twice. But I remember once to see Philip Glass and his ensemble. This was a while ago. I was in New York for something else. My dad and I were going to hear Parsifal on a Saturday. And the Friday night, we saw that Philip Glass was playing. Maybe it was his 80th birthday or something, because he's like 120 now. One human year is worth 7 years. I don't know, whatever. 7 human years is worth one Philip Glass year. I don't know. But he played music in 12 parts, which is one of his really great early pieces. And it has a choir. It was a high school choir. They were going along in it. And it was great, but it's like 3 hours long and no intermission. Not that I remember. And I do remember intermissions, particularly in pieces that I don't think should have one. Towards the end, maybe the last 20 minutes, one of the young women in the choir, I was a bit tranced by the, right? The music's very hypnotic. It's great. It is music that has a real physiological and spiritual impact. That Philip Glass, particularly that early stuff, it's so good. With the farfisa organs. Anyway, this poor young woman started to throw up on the stage. And nobody stopped. They just kept going, and she just threw up. But when I was looking at it, my first thought wasn't that she was throwing up. It was that rose petals were manifesting and falling down on her. But poor child. I mean, it was a high school choir, I think. Just throwing up on Carnegie stage. Anyway, it is something to go in there and see like a 9-foot Steinway grand just right there on the stage. I haven't been to a solo piano recital in a long time. I've been to a lot of the symphony concerts where there's a soloist, but just a straight-up piano solo recital. I've been to one in the last year, and then it's daylight. It's probably been 10 years since I saw. And I thought, it's just beautiful. Just a beautiful Steinway on Carnegie on the stage. It's nice. Anyway, then, so pianist comes out, sits down, and he plays the Aria. And it was nice, he does the kind of things that I like to hear and that I like to think that I can do, which bring out some nice inner voicing. And what he did nicely was shift articulations. So you would have this very precise articulation, then it would sort of open up into a gesture. It was really nice, right? Then he hit the first variation, and it was so fast. I couldn't believe it. I've never heard it that fast. Not the Gould, nobody. It's 30% faster than I would ever have thought anyone would play it. And I was like, what's going on? Do I like this? It really blew my mind. And then it just kept going. Each variation was so well played. But these virtuoso variations, man, I mean, it sounded like... So the last 4 or 5 kind of have this nice progression. They build up to a quadruped, and then, which is big, really big, can be a really big romantic... Certainly the way he played it was... I was listening to some of them like... Boom. I thought, holy shit, that sounds like Schumann. And yeah, I do like it. I mean, I don't think I would ever try to play it like that, and no one else ever should. But he just nailed it. It was so human. I couldn't... Well, I was still thinking, because at a certain point I was just engaged in the music. But I thought, what made him think to play like this? Like, nobody else does. Right? When I play, I'm thinking, oh, this is how Andres Schiff plays it. I like that. I'm going to try to do it. Or oh, this is like Glenn Gould plays it. There's a, you know, I really like the Jeremy Denk recording. He just has a really nice physicality to it. Well, I listen to those three. Schiff. Schiff is my current reference for Bach. Gould I just grew up with. Denk I think is a fantastic. I just like him. I listen to anything he does. But none of them play it like this. I mean, who plays it like that? It's fantastic. And that's a good point. Right from the beginning. So here's the other thing I really liked is he was clearly a human being up there. And he wasn't being explosive in his gestures, but he was absorbed in the music. And sometimes someone's up there and they may be a wonderful player, but I don't get the feeling that they're engaged as a human with of course they are, right? But he was just had a really nice. I don't mean to say nice. Now I've said he's pretty and nice, and those can be a bit pejorative, and I don't mean that. He was really très sympa. He was very genial, pleasant, human, kind. I've watched a lot of interviews with him since then, and he is just thoughtful and kind as a person, at least in those interviews. It could all be a facade, but I don't think so. He had a wonderful breath that took place between the variations. There was just the right amount of pause. He didn't go right into them, and he also didn't stop, but he would sort of let it go, and then a couple of them he would sort of, and then, it was wonderful. I kind of fell in love. It was so not what I expected. And I'm so glad I went. And he was obviously over the moon to be playing there. At the end of the piece, he came out. He skips off the stage. I mean, I think he's in his 30s, maybe 40. He was young compared to me, but as he walked off, he just sort of gave a little skip off this. It was very endearing. Anyway, he came back out, and everyone's about ready to sit down for the encore. But he's got a microphone. He says, no, before you sit down, what can you possibly play after the greatest keyboard piece ever written? It ends with the aria, so the natural piece would be the first variation again. But then you have to play the second, and then you never end. So there was no encore, but it was a great Goldberg variations. Nothing beforehand. I think other players might have been tempted to throw a couple of preludes and fugues or something to build it out a little bit, but whole thing was done in 70 minutes. Started at 8. I was back in the hotel room by 9:45. Fantastic. But as he was talking about not playing an encore, he made a point of calling out everyone in the $10 seats. I don't know if they're $10 now. He said that's what they were when he was a student, and he would come and hear his idols play at Carnegie Hall. So I've ordered, of course, the recording. His Goldberg recording is available on Spotify to stream, but that's not right. I've ordered the vinyl. That's the proper way to listen. That should get here on Saturday. Maybe I'll do a short when I unbox that. But it was wonderful, and you if you know the music, listen to the recording on Spotify, and let me know if you are as surprised by it as I was. The Times reviewer basically said what I've said. There were some comments that basically said what I said, but as a negative, like playing these movements as not just as fast, but as big, as romantic. What was not universally loved, but I found it to be absolutely hypnotic, and I'm going to end by bringing in a video of me playing. In other words, very short. But a few years ago, 2018, 2019, pre-COVID, we all, my wife and my daughter, went to Toronto for a spring break. So my daughter was still in university. Went to spring break and went to Toronto. It's not that far a drive from Pittsburgh, 3 hours maybe. We'd never been. We thought we would go there for 5 days. We got a nice Airbnb place to stay. It was great. Well, of course, Toronto has all of the Gould stuff, right? So I walked out and found his grave. And then in the, can't remember the name of the hall, the performing hall in Toronto, they have the piano that Gould used for the last, 5 or 10 years of his life. So he was very particular about a Stein, was it modeled, 271 or something like that, a particular Steinway that he played and toured with it. And at one point it got damaged. But so the 1981 recording of the Goldberg variations, which is the recording that I glommed onto. I was, in high school and listened to it over and over again. The piano that he used to record that is a Yamaha. Anyway, so I sent a note to the manager of the facility there and said, hey, I'm going to be in town and I'm a bit of a fan. I understand that you can, it's possible to see the piano. It's out there. And is that right? And he said, yeah, just stop in when you come in. So I stopped in, and they had tuned the piano. They'd brought it out, and I could play it. How cool is that? So I have the Aria memorized, and so I played that. The piano that Glenn Gould used, it felt great. I mean, I think it's certainly tuned. It hasn't been voiced. It hasn't been regulated. But that was a vibe. Anyway, here's that. So that's what my outro will be me playing the Aria from Goldberg Variations.